Good morning everyone and welcome to my channel English Literature. Today we will talk about Native American period or pre-colonial period and its literature. We have already talked about the history of the time, so today we will talk about its literature. Pre-colonial literature. Now, by American literature we don't mean the pre-colonial literature. By American literature, we meant the literature of the colonialists who settled there. Portugal, France, England, all the people from various countries came and settled in America. And before they settled there is actually no literature if you call it in the sense of written documents. There's no alphabet, no development of manuscript, book, dialects, in the sense of creating a literature. Of course, there is literature in the sense of its oral origin. But by American literature, we don't mean that native oral tradition. You have to keep in mind, by American literature, we mean the written documents created and spread and practiced by the settlers. When you studied British literature, do you remember my first video, very beginning videos on Old English period, the language development videos you can watch. There we talked about Fadrak, the first alphabet of English alphabet that was mixed from Roman alphabet and the Germanic alphabet. They get mixed and make Fadrak, that alphabet. And from Fadrak, there we find the gradual development of English alphabet and dialect, manuscript, book, and this gradual development will miss in American literature. And because American literature is far more recent, it is ready-made literature, because those people who came there to settle there, if you take it as English people, then there is literally already flourished in that land. 1620, King James I was in the throne, and already Renaissance period, Elizabethan period, glorious period was evolving, was going on, and literature was at its peak time. So those who are settling there, they had already they are already equipped. They are already equipped all the literary components. So they are producing literature here by getting their literature getting shaped by the new atmosphere, new situation, new circumstances. That is called American literature. So there is not too much you can don't have to dig up too much for finding the source of American literature. American literature is far more recent and modern than the other literature. For its origin, we don't have to dig up much in the ancient soil. By American literature, we don't indicate its pre-colonial culture, heritage, or rituals that expressed its intonation and features through oral tradition. By American literature, we mean the documents, the books, the pamphlets, whatever it is, that is made by the settlers, that is created by the settlers, not the pre-colonial culture, the oral tradition or the native people's tradition. And by American literature, we mean the literature that evolves out of the encounter between the colonizers and the exotic new world, where they set up a new civilization. So I have talked about this just now, that by American literature we mean the literature of the settlers who came there. And so you can ask that, then what is the difference? You can call American literature English literature. There is some difference. There is some demarcating lines, lines of thought, lines of perception, lines of contemplation, lines of feelings. There are so many lines there that demarcate American literature from English literature, because every literature gets shaped through its geopolitical situation, through its geography, its existential scenario, its whatever you can call it, the atmosphere, the weather, the existential crisis, the struggle for life, the native people with their conflict, class, survival strategies, all these things shaped the literature of American literature. When we talk about American literature, you will find that their literature was totally based on, at the very beginning, on pamphlets, documents, And all those documents and pamphlets talk about their first encounter in this new land and their survival strategies, their meeting, their conflict, their clash with the native people. So this is the demarcating line. Every literature you produce in that context becomes their literature. If you find that I am an Indian and I go to America and I write something about America and I settle there, I get settled there, I become that citizen, and then I started writing. So that will not match with my soil. That will be totally different type of literature based on evolved out of the American soil. I feel that I can make you understand. Now, it was not an abandoned or virgin country, ready, waiting for the outside world to encroach and build a civilization. It was already fulfilled with its native people. It is already populated. We can quote here Richard Gray. At the moment when the inhabitants of the old world and the new world first met and began to describe the meeting, there were more than 10 million Native Americans, okay, speaking more than 350 languages. So you can imagine that there was no story of virgin country. The invaders came from various parts of Europe and settled in the new world with their indigenous culture. All the seacoast countries, France, Spain, Italy, Portugal, England obviously, all those from the various parts of people came and settled there. And their language, their culture did not get mixed or melted. It was not a melting pot, but it was like a mosaic. All have their original shape and style. Just like they have their individuality. I'm not a good artist. I am not at all artist. I can't paint. Anyway, I just want to mean that they all not get mixed up, but they remain just individually, retaining their individual distinct characteristics. There is no link between the earliest history of the Aboriginals and the new settlers. Nothing was carried out that the settlers come there and take the alphabets created by the Aboriginal people and then created some literature. That was not the thing. We have talked that. Native literature, if we term it literature, was totally oral. Native American literature or pre-colonial literature was based on speech and performance, dance, storytelling, just like the beginning of any literature. There are certainly common themes in their songs and tales that celebrate the rituals and livelihood. हर एक culture में ये होता है. Just it start with the oral tradition and then that got gradually evolve into written language. Nature was treated as sacred power. You can find when you read American literature or any other country, you can find similar to your own country, your own people. Because history, human history or language history or literature history all evolved through the same route. There is no linear process like the development from oral to written, then from dialect to language, from manuscripts to books. No alphabet or written documents. Now, the pre-colonial civilization had a deep heritage of culture, mythology, rituals, chants, and poetry, trickster tales, history. There are tales of human and cultural heroes, mythical characters, stories of the trickster, tales of love, war, animal spirit. All these themes were in every literature, every country. In their tales, there was also the reference to the coming of whites. Yeah, that was all they referred. The actually whites were coming from the time of Columbus. Now and then people are coming from the European countries, and in their oral tradition we find the mention of those coming, those settling. It is like an apocalypse, story of apocalypse in their tradition. Oral tradition was carried out from one generation to another generation. No written system. Tales, legend, chants, fairy tales, myths, traditional ways of life were celebrated. The primitive works focused on natural archetypal characters. The history of American literature began with the age of colonialism. And the native people who were mainly hunter-gatherers, and agriculture was also the priority. So in their oral literature, this agrarian lifestyle was vividly celebrated. So oral culture is totally dependent on the lives they are experiencing and the lives they are living. That is totally developed through that. Now we can find some modernization of the oral tradition by textualization. Textualization of the oral tradition. Later colonial masters modified and renovated and translated and rewrote their tales. What they read today or are informed today about pre-colonial culture is the result of textualization. Sorry, there is one extra T. Something that necessarily rips the story out of the living tissue of the world in which it was formed and changed. It was no longer part of a communal dialogue, a continuous process of myth-making, but a text set in the apparent authority and fixity of print. Again, Richard Gray. If you read the book of Richard Gray, you will find so many information. And of course, there are some other books. If you want to know, I can mention. There are so many books that help me to understand American literature. But I appreciate Richard Gray. And also there is the books of P.K. Nair. And one writer, female writer collaborates with him. I cannot remember the name now. But I will make a video, particularly a small video on the books you can consult for American literature. Okay. So thank you. Next day we will talk about colonial literature, and it will take too much time. You can understand that there will be so many writers and their pamphlets. Thank you.